Imagine a nation paralyzed by fear, villages empty, roads abandoned, and people hiding in the shadows. For 20 long years, oppression ruled, but in the midst of this darkness, God raised a woman, not a warrior, not a queen, but a prophetess, whose voice shook a nation, summoned an army, and ushered in 40 years of peace. Today we step into the powerful story of Deborah, the only female judge in Israel's history, and discover what God can do through a woman who dares to say yes. This is Women Called by God TV, and this is the story of Deborah, judge, prophetess, and warrior of Israel. Today we turn our attention to one of the most remarkable women in Scripture, Deborah, the only female judge in Israel's history. Her story, preserved in Judges chapters 4 and 5, shows us a woman whose courage, wisdom, and prophetic voice shaped the destiny of an entire nation. Deborah rose during a time of deep spiritual decline. Israel had once again fallen into the cycle of sin, oppression, and despair that defines the book of Judges. For 20 long years, the Israelites suffered under the cruel rule of Jabin, king of Canaan, and his powerful military commander Sisera, who terrorized the people with 900 iron chariots. Highways were abandoned, villages deserted, and fear dominated daily life. It was in this environment of chaos and hopelessness that God raised Deborah. Scripture introduces her simply. Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. She held court beneath a palm tree in the hill country of Ephraim, and the people came to her for wisdom, justice, and guidance. Her leadership was unique, not because she was a woman in a patriarchal society, but because the Spirit of God rested upon her. Deborah was a prophetess, one who carried the word of the Lord with clarity and authority. Israel trusted her not because of her gender or position, but because her voice aligned with God's. Her character made her leadership unquestionable. One day, Deborah received a message from the Lord for Barak, a respected military leader from the tribe of Naphtali. She summoned him and declared God's command. "Go, gather 10,000 men, and I will deliver Sisera into your hands." This was not a suggestion. It was a divine assignment backed by God's promise of victory. But Barak's response reveals how deeply the people respected Deborah's connection to God. He said, "If you go with me, I will go. But if you do not go with me, I will not go." Barak was not doubting God. He was acknowledging that Deborah's presence represented God's favor, God's guidance, and God's authority. Without her, he felt the nation could not stand. Deborah agreed to accompany him, but she spoke a prophetic word that would shape the story. Because Barak depended on her presence, the honor of the victory would not go to him. Sisera, the feared commander, would be delivered into the hands of a woman. It was a shocking prophecy in a culture dominated by male warriors, but God often moves in unexpected ways. Deborah rose alongside Barak and led the people to Mount Tabor. Sisera quickly mobilized his army, confident in the strength of his iron chariots. But at the perfect moment, Deborah declared, "Go, this is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands." And what unfolded was not merely a human battle, but a divine intervention. Judges chapter 5, the Song of Deborah, tells us that God unleashed a storm. The Kishon River flooded, mud swallowed the chariot wheels. The battlefield turned into chaos as the Canaanite army collapsed. What Sisera trusted in most became useless in the presence of God. Israel triumphed, and the Lord routed the enemy before Barak's army. Sisera fled on foot, desperate and defeated. But the fulfillment of Deborah's prophecy came through a woman no one expected, Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Sisera sought refuge in her tent, believing he had found safety. Jael welcomed him, offered him milk, covered him with a blanket, and waited until he fell into an exhausted sleep. Then, with boldness and precision, she took a tent peg and drove it through his temple. When Barak arrived, Jael showed him the dead commander. Deborah's prophecy had come true. God had given victory into the hands of a woman, but not the one the nation imagined. After the victory, Deborah and Barak sang a song that stands as one of the oldest poems in the Bible. In this song, Deborah calls herself a mother in Israel, capturing the essence of her leadership: nurturing, protective, wise, and deeply committed to the well-being of God's people. Her song praises the tribes who rose to fight and rebukes those who refused. It paints vivid images of God fighting from heaven, the river sweeping the enemy away, and the heartbreak of Sisera's mother waiting for a son who would never return. It is a powerful reminder that even in victory, war has a human cost. Deborah's leadership ushered Israel into 40 years of peace, one of the longest periods of rest in the entire book of Judges. She stands out not just as the only female judge, but as one of the most righteous and effective leaders Israel ever had. Her authority did not come from title, force, or lineage, but from her connection to God, her integrity, and her willingness to obey when the nation needed her most. Deborah shows us that God can raise a woman to lead nations, speak His word, and bring deliverance in the darkest of times. Her life reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the presence of faith, that leadership is not about gender, but about calling, and that when God goes before you, victory is certain. Deborah remains a shining example of wisdom, courage, and faithful service. A judge, a prophetess, and a warrior whose legacy still inspires generations of women to rise in the strength of the Lord. Join me as our Women in the Bible series continues. Our next episode features Priscilla, the woman God used to teach leaders, strengthen churches, and shape the faith of generations. Priscilla was a woman whose wisdom, courage, and teaching helped shape the early church. Thank you for joining me today. If Deborah's story spoke to your heart, I encourage you to share this message with another woman who may need strength for her own journey. Remember, God still raises women to lead, to speak, and to stand with courage in the places He calls them. If this teaching blessed you, please like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode in our Women in the Bible series. Until next time, keep seeking His voice, keep walking in His strength, and keep trusting the calling He has placed inside you. This is Women Called by God TV, where faith, rest, and renewal meet every day.
trust your voice.